Welcome to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. We're here to get real about what really matters, not accolades or achievement, not doing more or having it all, but stripping away the extra so that you can be more present, more grounded, more rested, and more you. We're your hosts and co-founders of WellRise, Denise
and Kayla. The Good, Better, Betterness podcast is a monthly chat with and for Black women about what self-care is and how you can make it an intentional part of every single day. We share real stories with real women who are devoted to living a life rooted in better wellness and living in harmony with the world around them. Take a seat, take a breath, and explore how deep and radical self-care can transform your life. So, we're really excited. We have an amazing guest today, and we're going to be talking about all things business, being a boss woman. I'm just really excited to hear from our special guest, and we're going to have, an introduction first. We're going to get into this icebreaker though, Sands. I'm really excited about this because we haven't done this before. But we're going to be chatting and talking about how we can begin to identify a need for change and begin to thrive in our purpose, which is what we're doing all season long at Betterness Box, which is evolving. So let's do this icebreaker.
So the icebreaker here is who said that? So what we did was we found a quote that is somewhat related to today's conversation. And we want to see, Coach Dominique, if you are able to determine and figure out who you think said the quote.
Oh boy, pressure's on. Okay.
If not, you're not being graded here, but just a little fun to open up the segment here. So once again, segment is called Who Said That? And the quote is, "The success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. We should raise each other up. Make sure you're courageous, be strong, be extremely kind, and above all, be humble." Who do you think said that?
Ooh,
really generic. Like, we need to do better.
I mean, could have been a lot of different people, but if you think
it could have been a lot of women. Was it Michelle Obama?
No.
Great guess though, because I would have guessed that.
So your clue is she's younger than Michelle, and she is athletic.
Serena Williams?
Very athletic. Yes.
Right. Oh my God.
Well, good job. We selected that quote because I think the work that you do of inspiring women to live their best lives and kind of like get out of ruts and change their course to really live their full purpose. The more of that's done, the more women become inspired to actually do more of that. So I really thought that quote resonated with some of the work that you do, and wanted to share that quote today. All right, Kayla, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, we got to get into who is Coach Dominique. We got to know, like, what is this woman about? Where did she come from? So we're just going to pass it over to you, amazing Coach Dominique Worship. Tell us about who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. And I love that quote. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna have to add that to my repertoire of quotes. So I'm an executive coach and leadership advisor, and I work with high achieving women and high impact companies. And my approach to leadership development is centered around supporting my clients to uncover and align with who they are at their core, the things that matter most to them, the impacts they want to create, and bringing all of that to bear in their lives and careers to achieve what I call exceptional alignment, which I believe lives at the sweet spot of your gifts, the impact you want to create, your values, and your emotions. And so when we're able to really get in touch with that, with who we are at our core and what we most deeply want, it's transformative. And so I kind of came to this through my own winding journey to finding exceptional alignment. So I started my career as a corporate lawyer, first at a large law firm, then at the National Basketball Association. And through those experiences, went through seasons of deep unfulfillment and misalignment. and often felt like I was living someone else's dream. So from the outside looking in, it looked like I was living the dream, but I wasn't living my dream. I was out of alignment with my values and my gifts and the impact that I wanted to create in the world. And so now my mission is to support other women to live lives of radical fulfillment and alignment. And to do it, I'll stop there.
I love it. And we're going to get into all the things because you talking just had so many different things going off in my head, especially as, you know, a Black woman. I'm sure there's so many women that are listening now that can relate to like, I'm in a rut. Like I am not in the place that I'm supposed to be. I'm not aligned with my purpose. What does that look like? But first, I'm just curious about like what challenges you've had, right? Like what have been some of the challenges? What have been some of the rewards that you've seen during your coaching journey?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so many challenges and also so many rewards. I think, you know, when I first came into this work, there was a little bit of a reckoning, kind of. I'd come to identify myself as a lawyer, right? This high achiever, someone who was kind of on this very specific path to success. And I had to redefine what success meant for me personally. I realized that the kind of ladder climbing model of success was not aligned with my own definition of success. And so that was challenging in the beginning, to really own that and reckon with that and then take action that was aligned with that. And so there was a lot of unlearning and relearning that I had to do. And so I think those were a lot of the early challenges, particularly leaving the stability of a corporate job that was stable and, you know, it was a great job.
Talk about it, girl. Talk about it. We look at our bills and we're like, so how is this supposed to work?
Exactly. There's a lot of fear around that. And I describe it as what started off as a whisper, like this whisper that I was meant to do something different, turned into a scream that I could no longer ignore. It really got to the point where I felt like I didn't have a choice. I had to take the leap, just to honor me and to honor the things that matter to me and the things that I care about and the impact that I knew I was capable of having in the world. And so that whole journey was filled with lots of challenges and lots of lessons. But on the other side of that, it's the most rewarding and energizing and fulfilling work I've ever done. And so I think that whole arc of that experience is what really kind of ignites my passion for sharing this with other women and showing them that it is possible. You can have this too. And so that's what drives me, I'd say.
Yeah. Quick question. So was there, I know that you talked about it kind of started to trickle in, but was there one defining moment that made you realize like, I actually have to take this leap and I have to make this change? Was there one moment or one experience that you can remember that really, really kind of pushed you over the edge to say like, yes, this is what I'm doing?
Great question. I mean, it was a long time coming. So I started my coaching business back in 2018, and I didn't take the leap until 2022. So there were 4 years in there of kind of doing both, kind of wearing both hats and towing the line between both things. And I think it just escalated over time. Toward the end of my time in my corporate role, I think I just started to get really clear on what I actually wanted. I myself was working with a coach at the time and doing she was doing with me what I do with a lot of my clients, really just giving myself permission to think about what I would do if I could do anything in the world. And so once that vision started to become clearer to me, then the choice became clearer to me. It's like that's when it almost felt like the choice was taken away. It was so obvious that this is what I was meant to be doing. And I had finally kind of built up the confidence to actually take the leap. That's what kind of gave me the final push. So there wasn't really like a dramatic, incident or anything. I was working up to that point. And I think it coincided with real understanding and clarity around the fact that I was not going to be able to do that thing that I knew I was capable of doing internally. I knew that I needed to be outside of the organization in order to create that impact.
No, yeah, that's very inspiring. And I think you talk a lot about your own individual journey, right? Like you had to convince yourself. You had to change your own narrative. With that, there's the external or the internal pieces of the transition in addition to kind of like the external pieces, right? So can you talk about that transition from like your support network, right? What was it like going through that transition, changing your career story of who you were? Did you get support from your family, friends, community while you were making that transition, or did you get pushback? What was that kind of transition like for you after you kind of had already determined in your mind, this is what I'm doing? What was your community? What was the response and reaction from the community?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. So I'll say, I'm fortunate to have a really supportive family, really incredible friend group, and they were all supportive of me and my vision. So I think something I'd been talking about quite a bit. They had seen me build this business and they were all rooting for me. And so I definitely felt that support. I think that some, people have different views on taking that sort of risk. And so I think particularly with my family, they were really great about not saying that outwardly, but I could just kind of tell from some of the questions they were asking, like, so what is it that you're going to be doing? What's the plan? They were nervous. And so I had to be really intentional about building a network that understood, that maybe had been down that road before, that could offer support and guidance and encouragement in that season when there was a lot of fear, and having the fear of other people kind of projected onto me was not helpful. That was not serving me. And so I had to be really mindful and protect my energy. I talk a lot about that, but in this season in particular, I really had to be careful about who I was taking advice from. And this was not so much my family, but just my external network. I'm big on leaning into the guidance and insight of other people. I love having connected conversations. But I found that when I connected with people who, had their own feelings and views about taking that sort of risk, that really had nothing to do with me, right? Everything that we say and do and think is through the lens of our own perspective and experience. But I found that it was really hard to be with that kind of fear and doubt that wasn't mine and didn't belong to me and didn't have anything to do with me ultimately. So I had started to be really, really mindful of who I was in conversation with at that time and who I was sharing my vision with, because it was like a baby that I had to protect, right? I felt it was vulnerable and it's scary, and you have to be really careful about who you let into that and who you are taking advice from. And so that's one of my biggest pieces of advice to people who are kind of navigating these big transitions, is be really, really mindful of who you're surrounding yourself with and the voices that are kind of, speaking to you during that season.
That is so good. I'm just thinking about some of the core values we have at Better This Box, and one of them is community. And I 1000% agree. I think there's like these trends now going around where like women are budgeting in groups, right? With their friends. They're sharing how much they make. They're sharing what their financial goals and their investment goals are. We're not like in the silos or isolated anymore. We're like with our core people sharing this information. And I think it's more and more of a trend, right? Like girls are going on girls trips more and just naturally, right? We're doing life with each other a little bit more intentionally. And I think with business and us as Black women starting so many businesses, more than any other demographic in the world, it's important for us to have that same intentional, view when we look at trying to create community for each other or with each other. I think that's amazing. And I love how, you're inspiring women to kind of chase their dreams. And I'm thinking about like what mindset you even have to have, right, before you make that decision, and say, okay, I'm going to be intentional about this, right? You have to kind of have a confidence about yourself. You have to kind of have a little bit of a grounding of who you are. And I'm wondering just randomly, what kind of things that you do to kind of build yourself up, right? To say, okay, I am going to be intentional about this, even before you made the big decision, right? Like, I'm going to be intentional about starting this coaching business on the side. I'm going to be intentional about the people that I'm choosing to get advice from or who's in my network. Were there things you did to kind of build your foundation a little bit more? Did that come from your family life, right? Like, what would you say that was?
Absolutely. There were so many habits and routines that I built up during this process that served me really well. And so I think probably the number one, particularly in that time of transition, but even before that, was having a journaling practice. And so I'm a big fan of morning pages. So every morning I would wake up And the first thing I would do is set a timer for 20 minutes, light a candle, get comfy, and just stream of consciousness journal for 20 minutes every single morning during this transition in particular. And it allowed me to kind of give voice to all the doubts and fears and, voices that were kind of swirling around in my mind. It allowed me to get them out of my head and onto paper and release them. It was really a cathartic exercise for me, and it cleared space for the things that I actually wanted to be thinking about and meditating on throughout the day. And so that was a really transformative practice for me during this season, really just giving myself that time and space and treating those 20 minutes every day as sacred, a non-negotiable, and kind of honoring that and honoring myself through that. That was really important. I did a lot of mindset work. So to your point, you mentioned confidence. That was something that I really felt like I needed to cultivate. I was stepping away from what I knew and into the unknown. And I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome in the beginning. And so, I put a lot of work in to get myself to a place where I felt grounded and centered. And one of the things that a mentor of mine, a piece of advice that he gave me was, forget courage and forget confidence, right? We hear a lot about you need to be courageous and you need to be confident. What are you committed to? Use that to fuel you. Think about something that's bigger than you. What's the vision that you're committed to? Who do you want to serve? What's the impact you want to create? And use that as the source of your confidence. And that really changed the game for me, because it wasn't about me. I was just a vessel, right? It was about something bigger than me. It was about serving women and really giving back in a way that felt meaningful and impactful. And I really believed in my ability to do that. And so when I shifted the focus from me to them, to who I wanted to serve, it changed everything for me.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That is amazing. I hope y'all are taking notes out there, because these are amazing gems that you're giving. It actually reminds me of Denise and I. Again, we started basically around the same time in 2018 that you did. And it was really this moment I remember feeling like, okay, what we can't be quarterly, right? We were moving from monthly to quarterly. Can we be quarterly? Is this a thing? Can we do this? Right? And it was like, well, what are we committed to? We're committed to the well-being of Black women, period. How are we going to do that? Can we create custom boxes? I mean, can we do that? Yes, we can, because look, there are Black women who are receiving this box, and it's a well-being box, right? Like, our core identity and values are still in that. And I think that's a great business, right, mindset as well, because in business, you're going to have to pivot no matter what. But you go back to like that core value of saying your why, right? We always talk about your why. And I love the way you put it. It's like, what are you committed to? It gives you that opportunity to then say, okay, I can still do this because it's in line with what is really truly what my goal is and what I feel like my purpose is, and what impact I want to make in the world. So I love that. Is there an example? I know our listeners love examples. They love practical examples. So thank you for that morning routine. Cause I'm getting ready to get a candle, put that right. I already do my devotional in the morning and it sets my day off. Okay. But I'm about to get the candle and, do the whole thing. Some days I got crust in my eyes. It's fine. Y'all just light the candle and get your journal out. But I'm wondering if there's like an example of a powerful mindset shift that you saw, right? Like you took one of your coaching clients from A to Z and you were able to kind of see the transformation with them. And, how can we maybe apply that as the listeners? Listen, I'm selfish. So me, Denise, how can we all, apply that kind of shift if there's, a specific example that you have?
Yeah. So mindset is where I start with all of my clients, regardless of what their goals are, regardless of the level that they're at, what industry they're in. It all starts with mindset. And that's because our perspective really does create our reality. And so we might not be able to choose our circumstances, but we can always choose the perspective that we're holding. And so I think just recognizing that in and of itself is a powerful mindset shift, recognizing the control that you have just by choosing the perspective that you're holding and moving through life with. You're controlling your reality, right? You're creating your reality. So that's a big piece of it. I'd say the second mindset shift or mindset kind of insight is around what I call the saboteur or the inner critic. So the voice of fear, the voice of self-doubt, the voice that says we can't or we shouldn't or we're too much of this or not enough of this. Really learning to recognize that voice, and when it tends to present itself, we all have a version of it and they all have different narratives. And so familiarizing yourself with that and recognizing this isn't my intuition speaking to me, right? If we're not careful, we might think that doubt means don't. And so the fact that I'm having this fear or these second thoughts, maybe it's a sign that I shouldn't do it. In fact, it's a sign that you probably should. And I tell my clients that all the time. That fear means that you are on the right track, because the saboteur rears its ugly head the moment that we are on the precipice of our dreams. The closer we get to it, the louder that voice gets. And so recognizing that is a game changer. Realizing that, I know what's going on here, right? I see what you're up to and I hear you. Thank you, but I'm in the driver's seat here. So when you become aware of it and attuned to it in that way, you get to choose not to take direction from it. You get to choose, it'll be in the car with you maybe, but it's not driving. And so I think that shift is really, really powerful, especially as, with all of my clients, we're working towards, I call it unleashing their something bigger. Like, what's the something bigger that's there for you? And that's the saboteur really thrives in that space. And so learning to recognize your saboteur and externalize it in that way is another really powerful mindset shift.
That is like my favorite, because I'm now thinking about like that inner critic, right? Like whatever you want to call it. And it happens so often. And I think, when we're younger and we hear something like, hey, when it gets hard, that's when you're almost at the end, or, all these like little, it's like, what? I'm taking the easier road. Nobody got time for that, right? And then you mature and you learn about, some of these, like you actually experience it. You experience pushing through, and then you're like, wait, this is true, right? And it kind of reinforces that thought. And I think it's really important to truly, truly understand that, because fear will literally sabotage you. There's so many different things that come from our lived experiences, from family, especially from friends, whatever it is. And we use that as almost, and for me, the enemy uses it to like play over and over in your head. And it's like, yep, I'm going to remind you. Remember that one time you failed, right? Remember that one time you did this? It's like, no, I'm not that person anymore. And I've learned my lesson. And now this is who I am, right? Like you have to reprogram yourself. And I just love the fact that you're calling out, right, the saboteur. And you mentioned also writing those fears down in the morning and just kind of letting it all out. And I think that's important too, because you're taking your power back from it by naming it, by calling it out, right?
Exactly.
I love that.
I love it so much.
The moment we speak it into, like the moment we say the thing, it loses its power. When it lives in the depths of our minds, it looms and it feels big and it feels scary. But the moment you say the thing, I see it all the time with clients. The moment we just acknowledge the fear, there's like visible relief that happens. And so there's so much power in just kind of acknowledging it and releasing it.
Yeah, I saw recently, and it said action really helps to omit anxiety, right? So any action. And I think that's one of the things, like I know that your clients are likely up or higher in their career ladder and things of that sort. But really, we like to have, practical information that's for everybody, no matter kind of like what stage they're at. And I do think that really once you're like in climbing the corporate ladder, you're director and above, that's really when you actually start to get comfy in the uncomfortable, right? Like prior to that, I don't think you actually understand that, like, I can be wrong. I can say, I don't know. I can say, you know what, that's a great perspective. Let me do some research and get back to you. You're not really taught those things as you're building in your career. And then the leadership levels, director and things of that sort above, that's, like I said, when you really start to understand, like, oh, I can be wrong. I can not have an answer. So can you kind of just talk about like getting comfortable in the uncomfortable situations? And then also we'll talk about that first. And then I have one more question too that's very, very practical to start to help build the confidence in those spaces as well.
Absolutely. Yes. So I love that you're calling that out. I use this line or say this to my clients all the time. Discomfort is a feature of the process, not a bug, right? We can expect to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And I think sometimes there's a fear of the discomfort, which only makes things worse for us. So once we're able to just kind of embrace the discomfort for what it is and work through it, things really shift in our favor. And I think with respect to your question around how do you get comfortable saying, I don't know, or can I get back to you, or not showing up as perfect all the time, right? Because no one is. I think part of it is leaning into your curiosity, right? So you might not have all of the answers, but you can find the answers that you need. And just being confident in that, knowing that you are resourceful. In coaching, we say you're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. You have all the answers you need, and the answers you don't have, you know how to find them, right? You'll figure it out. And so I think that's the muscle that you build, and the, kind of trajectory that you're speaking to when you hit that director level and above. I think you have enough kind of reps in where you start to recognize that those moments when you might not have an immediate answer, or maybe you fumble something, it's reflective of who you are, right? Those things don't define you. And so I think you build that muscle and you build that confidence as time goes on.
Yeah, that's so key, of not attributing what you do to who you are. Another piece of that, though, I think, and like I said, very much on the practical side of things, are there any resources that you tend to use to have people start to understand, like, how to quickly identify transferable skills? Because I think that, like, you're talking very much the mindset, right? And I think that you definitely have to start there, but then identifying your transferable skills helps to also start to build confidence as well from like a different lens. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of tools or resources that you tend to share with your clients that helps them kind of get to the nuts and bolts of, like, when I'm making this change, these are some of the things that I already have that I'm doing that were maybe used in a different way that now can be, adjusted slightly, but now can be used in this new vein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think as we develop, and it's a great question, as we, progress in our careers, we're exposed to things that we maybe haven't seen before, right? We're put in situations that we haven't been put in before. And that's a part of the growth. As you advance, you're going to be challenged. And so I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of recognizing that you have so many tools within your arsenal, even though you may not have confronted this exact situation, recognizing that you have what you need in order to get through it. And so learning to kind of tap into some of those transferable skills is really helpful. One of the exercises that I'll do with clients, particularly if they're feeling like I'm unequipped, right? I'm not ready for this role that I'm stepping into, or even in the interview process, if they're interviewing for something and they might feel like, I don't have what it takes to do this role, I'll make them write down every role that they've had over the course of their career. And from each of those roles, what did you learn? What's something that you gained? And when they do that, physically write it out, which is, can be tedious and annoying. And sometimes they roll their eyes at me in the moment, but they always thank me later because it helps them see this transferable skills, right? So I learned how to communicate properly. I learned how to manage conflict. I learned how to draft an email properly, right? Whatever the thing is, these little things that we take for granted, because we're always focused on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, we kind of lose sight of what we're building and gaining along the way. So that very simple exercise of just writing, each role that you've had and one thing or multiple things that you've learned or gained from that role can be really, really illuminating.
Yeah, I think,
hold on. Just in my head, us millennials, and is it Gen Z, the ones after us? We got jobs, okay? So that exercise is going to take a long time. I know for me, I started off, I don't even know, at Express, then Macy's. I was a security guard. I worked in a call center. I get what you're saying, though. Real talk. I do totally understand, because I definitely can, even just sitting here thinking about it, right? Go back to, I had to really become a chameleon in a lot of the jobs that I had. I had to learn how to communicate to different people at different levels, right? That's absolutely what I'm using today in being in mid management. Like, that's absolutely something that's required. And then now leading a company, of course I'm using those skills, but you won't really, almost take a moment to think about what it is that you've learned if you don't kind of sit down and do that exercise. So that's amazing.
I think one of the other things that always sticks out to me, and Kayla, you kind of talked about how we're being more intentional in our interactions with friend groups and family and things of that sort, and talking about salary and just different things, right? So one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is you don't know what you don't know. And as Black women in America, like you said, you're kind of taught like, I need to have 150% qualification before I even take action. You're trying to do the most before you get in the door. There was a study by Harvard, and I just looked it up to make sure that I'm not quoting who did the study, but it was a study by Harvard. And they basically said that men will apply to a job when they are 60% qualified for the job description. And women will be like, they don't apply unless they're over 100% qualified for that role, right? So when you just start to think about that, that starts to have you look at things a little bit different, right? You talk about the transferable skills. You talk about like, oh, well, I didn't do this, but I did this. This applies to that in this way. That alone, and then understanding that like, other people who are applying for this are maybe only 60% qualified, but what do they know? They know that I can have a sense of curiosity and I can come to the table with the desire to learn more and continue to build and evolve from where I am, right? So I thought that was like, it really fits because it helps to start to unlock, at least for me, that like, we don't have to be 100% qualified when you determine what my new dream is or what I want to do. But you have to start doing the work, right? You have to start taking the action to start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Maybe you're 30, 40, 50% there. But once you're, a certain point where you have started to build that confidence, you have started to build that mindset, that's really when I think it starts to come together.
Really quick. So one, just because my therapist, I always give her a shout out. Hey, Chandria. So she talks about imposter syndrome, and because most of her clients are basically Black women, she knows, and the studies show like we're so overqualified for most of these jobs, right? And even the ones we're even thinking about applying for. And so she hates the term imposter syndrome just because she's like, no, you can have a little anxiety over it, but you're not an imposter, girl. You know how to do this way better than the people that are in it and maybe have done it for years. That's number one. Number two is, and I've talked about this on other podcasts that we've actually been featured on, but like this idea of the audacity, right? Like having this, I'm just going to go for it just cause I'm just going to be audacious about it. See what happens. Who knows? Right. It's like having that kind of mindset, because when I hear that women are not applying or not asking for raises or not presenting and making sure that their leadership knows how their contributions are actually making a difference in the company. Like when they're not doing that, and then we like post the pay equity, right? Like, yes, pay us, but also we have to advocate for ourselves. And I think there's a book called Mediocre White Men. That is the goal, ladies. Okay. Like we need to have the same kind of outlook. This is a safe space that mediocre white men have, because so many of them are mediocre and we surpass them on so many levels. And so having the audacious mindset to say, yeah, I can do this. That's how I got my job now. Hopefully nobody's listening, but I definitely was like, sure, I can write stories. I don't know. Like, yeah. I Googled something, was like, cool. I know how to do it. Write stories every day now. Nobody knows.
But I think Kayla's like, yes, I could write it. What do you want me to do? I'm a whole product man. But I think the thing is like your curiosity, right? Even if Google is where your curiosity leads you, with the use of AI and tech, different tech innovations and things of that sort, you're not the only one using that, right? But we a lot of times are like scared to venture off into new tech and things of that sort. And it's like, no, like other people are using this to get a draft, to get a starting point. So you have to actually stay with the trends and utilize these things too, because then you actually are putting yourself at a disadvantage than kind of just, using different things to enhance what's already there, what you already have, in your arsenal.
Exactly. Yes. 1,000% yes to everything you just said. And I think part of it is having the trust, the self-trust to know I may not know today, but I know how to figure it out. I know how to Google. I know how to use ChatGPT. I know how to use the resources that are available to me, whatever those might be, right? So trusting that you will figure it out because you always have figured it out. I think remembering the things we've been through personally, professionally, they build resilience, right? And so just remembering and betting on you, just knowing that you know you have what it takes, whether or not you recognize it, right now, just knowing that you will be able to figure it out because you always have.
Absolutely. Love it. Very, very love that conversation. And Kayla and I literally we can talk about this all day because this is our jam. But I think the other piece of it is you're doing the work to inspire others, right? Can you tell us what do you do or what keeps you inspired? And it can be a recent success story from one of your clients or somebody that you're working with, but what keeps you inspired and wanting to continue to learn and grow on your own as well?
Yeah, great question. I mean, genuinely, my clients inspire me every single day. I think witnessing people living out their wildest dreams, having the courage to really envision something bigger for themselves, and then taking bold action to make that vision their reality is so inspiring to me. I actually launched an online community for high achieving women in the fall. It's called Exceptionally Aligned. And it's for women who are seeking deeper purpose, alignment, fulfillment in their lives and careers, and they're taking action towards that. And so it's a diverse community. We're in all different life stages, all different industries, different goals, different paths. But the thing that unites us is this desire for something bigger. And so having those conversations with those women and seeing them just commit to themselves and to their dreams and taking steps every day, even if they're small steps, the steps that we often discount, taking a moment to celebrate those and celebrate that progress in whatever form it comes, is one of the things that really, really deeply inspires me. Another thing that's inspiring me at the moment is an initiative I just launched with Yale Law School. It's a leadership development program that's creating space for the types of conversations that I wish I'd had when I was in law school. And so we're talking about things like, what are your values and how can you honor them in your career? What's the impact you want to create and how can you stay true to that? What are the gifts and the things that make you exceptional and how can you bring that to bear in your work? These really, really important questions that so many people don't take the time to consider. And so having the chance to consider that before you've even started your career is a game changer. And so it's been really inspiring just to witness and support these students as they're really committed to living out their dreams, living out their purpose, having an impact in the world and staying true to themselves. There's space to do both of those things. And I think that's a conversation that doesn't exist enough in academic spaces. And so it's been really rewarding and inspiring to be leading that for these students.
I am blown away. That is amazing because that disrupts the entire system, right? It's going away from this, we're producing you to do this work. Instead, you are now in control and get to decide what it is that you want to go. What impact do you want to make, right? And I think I know a lot of lawyers, I know a lot of folks that went to law school, and they do. I feel a lot of law students go in I'm going to change the world. A lot of them do. And then by the time they're done, they're I've got all these loans. I don't know what I want to do. And now I'm just going to have to work at some corporation as counsel to hopefully pay for this. And they kind of get stuck in that. And so I think it's so beautiful that you are starting, where it really counts with them, and having this initiative is amazing. So congrats, kudos to you. I can't wait to continue to support you in all of those things.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Right. Are we wrapping up and going to the lightning round?
Yes. So straight, you just lots of information. Even if you just take the one question as a to-do, right? The listeners of what are you committed to? That's a project in and of itself, right? I could think on that for the next 2 weeks and literally be I'm changing my whole life, right? You literally, if everybody just takes that one question and is what am I committed to? And to me, what I'm committed to is it's what you spend your time, your energy, and your money on, right? You start to think about it from very tangible perspective. And it really starts to show what you prioritize. Because what you do each day ultimately results in kind of what you are committed to. So, Cool. So we have a fun round here. I know that, with the law students and in here, we were talking about some deep questions. But these are light, fun questions. So really kind of, there's no right or wrong. But just let us know kind of the first thing that comes to your mind. What's a book that you read over and over again?
Ooh, I'd say Becoming by Michelle Obama. Yeah, it's one. When I first read that book, I'd never felt more seen from something I read. I just identified with so many aspects of her story and her journey to becoming, and the whole concept that we are forever becoming, right? We're ever evolving. And so I think it's one that you can read at any life stage multiple times, and it will resonate. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you.
So we are evolving. You can get your box at www.betternessbox.com. Evolving. We are evolving.
So there is a book in each Betterness box, but we have not actually featured Becoming by Michelle Obama. I think I kind of assumed that every Black woman had basically read it when it first came out. But that's a strong assumption. So maybe I shouldn't,
It's long though. It's one of those where you might have started it and then you didn't finish. So we might
come back to it. All right. Share a favorite comfort food. We all know we love good food around here. So what's a favorite?
Yes. It's a toss up between my mom's pound cake and her sweet potato pie. They are just chef's kiss. So good. And they taste like home. They bring me back to, childhood with my family, and we usually have those around holidays. So those are my top two.
Nice.
I need to look at flights back home because I need that sweet potato pie this year. Thank you for that reminder. Appreciate you.
Oh, I got you. That's the one self-care thing that you do today. How do you like to unwind after a long day?
With a good book. So I recently got a Kindle. I don't know why it took me so long to get a Kindle, but I finally got one. And so that's been my new kind of wind down at the end of the night. I get in bed, I get comfortable, and I just read on the Kindle. And it's been a really great way just to kind of shut my brain down. I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of, personal development, professional development, but at night I read fiction. And so it's just a nice way to kind of escape a little bit and wind down. Yeah.
Nice. So we tend to do, we have books that are both nonfiction and fiction, but No Regrets Summer is a little bit of a lighter mental lift. We tend to do fiction books in the summer. We've had some really great conversations around some of the fiction books that we have put in the box.
I love that.
Let's go to, what's the last song that you got totally addicted to? Like you were like, why am I listening to this song so much? It's just always here.
Probably Beyond by Leon Bridges, which is a slow song, but it was my wedding song. It was our first dance song. And so it brings me back to that really special day.
Which,
I'd say that.
Congratulations, because I know that wedding was not too long ago, right?
Thank you. Yes, it was in like 6 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
I love it.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Listen, does he have any brothers? Is he tall? Where did you guys meet? I have so many questions now, girl. Listen, because I'm out here trying, but it's rough.
Those are not answers that you need to answer. Those are not on the rapid fire list of questions.
I'm going to have to shoot a shot, okay?
Wishing you guys much just joy and
thank you so much.
And then we're gonna do one more. One superpower that you wish you had.
The ability to control time. Like if I could just slow time down for the really sweet moments that I want to savor and remember. Maybe fast forward through some of the things that I don't. Maybe pause and, rewind, go back to things, fast forward. Like I wish I could manipulate time a little bit.
Bro, I was with you until you said rewind. I liked the slow down and quick, but we've seen Avengers, okay, Thanos, and we're not here for it. We're not. You be messing stuff up when you go to touch stuff that had already happened. But I love the idea of like being able to slow time down just so you can like cherish some of the moments. I love that idea for sure.
Yeah.
But we can't. So you better be present, y'all. It's a reminder to be present. I love it. That was amazing. I'm super excited because this conversation, I think, is really has the potential to change someone's life, right? And really have someone think differently about whatever it is they've decided they believe, right? And that's what we love to do. We're never trying to be perfect and constantly achieve, right? That is literally the point of what we do at Betterness Box. It's literally how can we be better people so that we can be better for the community, for the world, for the purpose that we have and have been called to. And so this conversation has been right on point with that, especially when it comes to evolving, right? From one thing to another. You take, something you're doing passionately on the side and saying, I'm going to take the leap, and listen to the voice that's screaming in my ear, right? To take the leap and really like confront fear and call it out, right? There's so many different things that like, I'm like, oh yes, definitely going to take that morning routine with a candle. That's definitely happening. But I agree with Denise. It's like, oh, I can sit down and really think about like, what am I committed to? And yes, you can look at your bank account and you can look at those things and that's a reality check, but also the dream of what I want to be committed to, right? How do I want to pivot from what I apparently am committed to what I want to be committed to? And so I'm really excited about what feedback we're going to get with this episode and all the things that are going to come out of it. But I want to give you the opportunity for sure to tell us more about how to find you. How would a young woman, older woman, whoever, right, a professional woman if she wants to work with you, how can she get in touch with you and get connected to all of the things you mentioned throughout this episode?
Thank you for asking that. You can find me at my website, DomoniqueWorship.com, and Domonique is DOMONIQUE. The spelling's a little bit tricky. Or on Instagram, Coach Dominique, Coach_Dominique. I hang out there, and on my website, I have a contact form, so you can find my email. You can find a little bit more about my offerings. On Instagram, shoot me a DM. Always happy to chat. Always happy to hear from folks. So yes, please do reach out.
Your DM's about to be full because they got follow-up questions, girl. So yes, I'm so excited for our audience to get and connected with you, because I think it's so important, especially for who we serve, right? These young professional, upward moving Black women. And we really do need your coaching, your type of coaching, and why do all the things we do and, work so hard if we're not connected to purpose and aligned. So thank you for what you do. Denise, do you have any last things you want to call out? Are you ready to wrap up? We good to go?
No, I thank you for just bringing yourself to this conversation and having an authentic conversation with us. That's it. I just really appreciated the conversation today. Because like Kayla said, we are customers of our own product, right? So it's good when we can have these conversations, because you never know. You might have Denise and Kayla as your client, right? In addition to the other people in our community. So thank you. Thank you very much for your time today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Of course. So to wrap up, y'all know these were straight gems. We'd like to extend again our last heartfelt thank you to Coach Dominique for joining us on the Good, Better, Betterness podcast today. Make sure, like she said, to check out her website, DomoniqueWorship.com, and follow her at Coach_Dominique. That's DOMONIQUE. You're listening to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast with Denise and Kayla, where we have bold conversations centering the real journeys of Black women devoted to embracing better wellness. Bye, y'all. Ooh.